In this training video, we're going to look at pivot tables and the use of calculated fields within pivot tables. So the screen in front of me shows a raw data of standard data. So for example, this is the data that's been used to create a pivot table, and the pivot table has its own sheet. So I'll just click on the pivot table sheet for now. And this data has come from the raw data. So if we could look back at the raw data, which is the pivot table data, you'll see there's data like sales reps, regions, the products that have been purchased, the quantity and the price. So from this data, pivot tables can extract quite a bit of information. So if we go back to the pivot table itself, now to know which fields have been shown within the pivot table, under the Analyze tab, which is used in versions 2016 and 13, and under version 2010, it's the Options tab. And I'm looking for an area that's called Field List. So the field list is what tells me what is being shown at present in my pivot table. So I'm going to click Field List, and I can see there's 5 ticks. So that means there's 5 areas that have been used at present. So what I've done here is the sales rep down the bottom is in my row with this product. So I know the sales rep and I know which product they sold. In the regions, that's in the filters area. So region is in filters. The column displays the purchaser, so which customer bought the product. And in the values, I've got the sum of sales quantities, so the total of the sales quantity. Now, for example, I might want to do a bit of a calculation in a pivot table. So right now, what I don't know is the value of each sale. So I've got the quantity, I've got the price. Well, the value of the sale would be sales quantity times sales price. So I might want to see this in my pivot table as a calculated field. So this is where we're going now, is into the world of calculated fields within pivot tables. I'm going to close down the pivot table field list. Now on the Analyze tab in this version, under the Calculations section of the ribbon, there's an option called Fields, Items and Sets. Under the drop-down arrow, there's a very useful feature called Calculated Field, which I'm about to click now. So the calculated field, it requests a name of your calculated field. So what are you going to call it? Now this name will go into your field list. So all the calculations you create will make themselves available in the field list itself. Now the formula goes in the formula area, and the fields which can be used in the calculated fields are all listed in the fields area. So we're going to start this off. We're going to give the name of the calculation sales value. We're now going to click into the formulas part of the calculated field, and I'm going to remove the default 0 and go back to the equal sign. So the cursor is flashing next to the equal sign. Now I'm going to pick the fields I need for this particular calculation. So I want sales quantity. I'm going to click on it from the fields area, and I'm going to click Insert Field. Now I want the sales quantity to be multiplied by the sales price. So I've now put the multiplied sign in. The sales price, I'm going to click on it now, is a field, and I'm going to click Insert Field. So right now I've got the calculation I need for the sales value for my pivot table. Now click Add, and that now actually becomes available in the fields list itself. And I'm now going to, and you'll also notice when you click Add, you can then modify it as well if you wanted to change the name of the calculation in the future or the calculation itself. And you can also delete it. So under the calculated field area for a calculation, you can also modify and delete. We're going to leave it as it is for now. And we're now going to click on OK. Now the pivot table at the present begins to look a little bit messy with lots of zeros and lots of other numbers, and you might say, well, what has this actually done? Well, this is where the field list comes in really, really useful. So I'm now going to click on the field list. Now this is telling me the same information as before. So I've got regions in filter, I've got the sales rep and the product in the rows, which is fine. I've now got the purchaser in the column, but it's also put another heading in the column called values. So this is now coming all from the ticks that the pivot table is putting in itself. So it's now putting in ticks that we didn't request for the sales value itself. So I'm going to take out sales value right now, and that takes us back to the pivot table data as we saw it originally without the sales value. Now I'm going to take away quantity, sales quantity. So that's now left me with no data in the pivot table except the setup of the pivot table. Now I want to see the sales value. So I want to see what they've brought in for each of the customers. So sales value. So this is, for example, telling me the sales rep 1, who happens to be Alice Abrahams, has really brought in all the products for Sports City. So I can see now where each sales rep is bringing in the values of the sales and the breakdown of the information. So this can be quite useful for calculating and analyzing information within the pivot table. Now I could, for example, produce another calculation. So we've already got one in there now called sales value. I'm going to now untick sales value and put it back to the standard sales quantity. Now I'm going to close the field list again, and I'm going to go back into my fields, items and sets, and choose my calculated field. Now in this example, I might want to know a calculation. So there's forecasting business, and I was now looking for percentage increases. So I could say, well, I want to now see a 20% increase in sales for forecasting business information. So I'm going to give the heading sales value increase, and I'll say by 20%. So I'm going to go through the same process. I'm now going to remove the 0 from the formula area and go back to my equal sign. I'm going to choose the field I need. In this example, it's going to be sales value. And I'm now going to decide to put the sales value into the formula by inserting the field. So I've selected sales value and insert field. Now comes the maths behind this. So different people work in different ways. We could say, for example, sales value plus sales value again in brackets multiplied by 0.20, which would be an increase of 20%. Or we could say sales value multiplied by 1.20. So what that means, if you're unsure of calculations, 1 means 100%, 0.2 means an extra 20%. So that says 120% of sales value. That's what that is saying to the calculation. So sales value multiplied by 120% is going to increase it by 20%. I'm now going to add the name of the calculated field to the field list. So add, just check it's there. There it is. Sales value increased by 20%. And I'm now going to click OK as before. Now again, the data looks messy. Well, you've seen this before. It's because of what Excel is doing. It automatically puts the calculated field in. We can go back to the field list. And I can now say, in this example, yeah, I want to see the sales value increase, but I don't want to see in this example the quantity. So I'm going to remove the sales quantity. And now what I can see is a 20% increase on the original sales from the sales as it was previously. Now we can do a little check on this to see, make sure the figures have changed. So for example, we can see under Alice Abrahams, we've got, for the 20% increase, we've got 16,340.4 as the glove sales, and we've got the golf ball sales as 8,529. Well, if I were now to take the sales value increase by 20% off and turn back on the sales value, I can now see the figures are much smaller. So I can see that the calculation has actually increased the value by the 20%, which is through the calculated field. So very, very clever. So with sales value, that shows the original sales value, take it off, put on sales value increased by 20%. That shows the figure that I might like to achieve through various business means of marketing, promotion, hiring personnel. So this in effect gives you an ability to analyze and project data just through formulas within a pivot table. So calculated fields can be very, very useful in analyzing data and trends within a pivot table. This completes the example of calculated fields in a pivot table.